Hey, everybody, this is Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. We have a very special guest today, a young man that I've known for a long time, and I watched this guy play one heck of a lot of hockey games, and this is going to be a real treat. And as our listeners know, quite the hockey fan. We have Adam Krause. He is the associate head coach of UMD, University of Minnesota Duluth, men's hockey. Adam, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. Quite the honor to be invited on here. So it'll be pretty fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun, and we what we want to do, Adam, is really get our listeners to know you and your story, because you've had a very storied hockey career and now becoming the associate head coach at, I'll have to say, quite a young age at one of the most stellar Division I hockey programs in the United States of America. So pretty spectacular. But let's go all the way back to the beginning, Adam, and tell us, where'd you grow up, and tell us a little bit about your childhood and what that was all like.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Hermantown, Minnesota. I think it's becoming quite the popular hockey place. It was just mentioned in a little bit documentary movie, Hockey Land. So obviously there's a lot of rich hockey history there, and was really fortunate enough to grow up there in a smaller community, and that was pretty much surrounded by hockey. But I felt like, looking back, I had a fairly normal childhood, and grew up with two brothers that were active, and we played all the sports that you could play, and grew up playing baseball and football, and obviously hockey was a big thing, and golf and all those things. And just grew up in a household that my parents really encouraged us to try a lot of things, and do a lot of things, and be outdoors and be active. And that was something that was really important for them. And it was kind of, I had a group of friends that liked to do the same thing. So we were always out and about, always running around, and just really fortunate that way of having parents that, you're able to do those things. We didn't play hockey locally all the time in a lot of hotels and a lot of those things. So, looking back as I'm kind of starting my own family, you kind of gain some perspective to how lucky I was as a kid growing up with the family I did, and gave me the opportunity I did. So I was just really fortunate. As I get older, I'm learning how fortunate I was growing up, and kind of being able to do the things I was able to do.
So, Adam, a lot of this is going to be around hockey that we're talking about today. So when did you learn to skate, and when did you start playing organized hockey? How old were you?
Yeah, it was probably 3 or 4. From what my mom and dad tell me, my mom and dad weren't athletes. They'll tell you that, so I'm not breaking news to them right now. So, but no, I think we were in a community where hockey was a thing, and where I grew up right across the street from the elementary school. And at the time when I was growing up till about 10 years old, there was actually a rink in that. Now it's a parking lot. So we actually had a rink right across the street, and now, just down the street, it was a little bit farther walk. So it was really accessible for us. And it was just something that, I think my parents recognized that I liked from a young age. And, I'll probably relate a lot of these things to now, having a 4-year-old myself, and kind of, when to bring them to the rink, and when to stop, or this and that. And, my mom always said I just really liked going to the rink, and was just something I always was happy when I did. And the only thing she always said was I was always nervous before starting the game to score on the wrong goalie. And she always told me that the other team would have different jerseys on. And I remembered thinking that, which was kind of funny looking back at that.
Well, you scored a lot of goals. So if you scored 1 or 2 on your own goalie, I think you'd be forgiven. So your community obviously was really centered around a lot of hockey, but it was a small community, and a lot of support for it. Can you explain to people some of the outdoor rinks and the time that kids get to do that in that small community?
Yeah, and I think going forward before I go backwards, in the position I'm in now, I do a lot of recruiting, a lot of way around North America, and kind of learning how these different kids grow up, and how the different hockey associations work. And I coming back to what makes Hermantown special, and why they've had the success they've had, is the accessibility to ice. And, they have 4 or 5 outdoor rinks. And as far as I can remember, that's where we played. We didn't play inside a ton. And it was always accessible. And the people that were running the rinks, and they cared about the community, and it was pretty much, if no one's on the ice, you guys can skate. And I think a lot of times it's lock and key now. It's, you got to pay to do the ice, and it was pretty much, if no one's on it, no one's using it. So I think the access to ice is really important to Hermantown, and it was just something that we could always be on the ice. And I know a lot of communities aren't like that. So I think the number of players that have been produced there is largely based on just the access to it. And we enjoyed doing it. So right after school, it was easy. The schools were right there. We walked to the rink. The warming shack was always open. They let us keep our gear there. It was just really, there was no boundaries or no barriers to getting better at hockey. So if you liked it, you could go and you could stay as long as you want. And if you liked it, you could get fairly good at it because, like I said, the access was always there. And again, my mom would have to pick us up and drag us out of there every night to make sure we did our homework, and we had to go to church on Wednesday nights, and it was a battle every week. So yeah, I think the access to it and just the community took a lot of pride in it. I think it still does. So that was something that was really special to me. And like, again, as I get older and I'm recruiting these players and seeing all these other hockey associations, I'm realizing Hermantown's fairly special when it comes to that, just that access they have, and the people that are running that program are proud to do it. So I think that's a huge difference.
Adam, you had mentioned early on here about playing baseball, playing football, golfing in the summer. And how important do you find that in your career now when looking back at young men that you're recruiting, of having, instead of just being single focused on hockey, that, hey, these guys may have done some of these other sports and been multi-sport athletes?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a popular thing nowadays, is you're kind of seeing these kids go to one sport. And quite honestly, and I don't know if I'm saying anything I shouldn't, but largely the reason that I played a lot of those sports is my dad and mom always said that if you're not playing sports and you're not busy, you're going to get a job. So I think it was largely due to just me trying to avoid work. So my dad, said, if you're going to be at, the baseball field playing VFW or playing Legion, or you better be in a hockey camp, or you better be in a football camp or something like that, or else you're going golfing and I'm dropping off at it, or something like that. And as soon as he kind of saw me stagnant at the house, there were some questions being asked. And so as long as the grass was cut and I was doing some active things, there was a lot of freedom there. And I think, you can make the argument it creates a more well-rounded athlete, when you're getting older. But I think it's somebody who has a work ethic and enjoys doing all those things and enjoys being busy and time management. I just enjoys that activity and just loves that team concept and things like that. So I could argue the science of, does three sports make you a better hockey player, or indulging in the one sport your whole life? I don't know about all that, I'll be quite honest. But I think somebody that just has that commitment to the different sports and can put some time in getting better at some different things, I think just makes you a well-rounded person, gets you around different groups, which my parents always thought was really important. I was so immersed in the hockey. My parents encouraged us to, my mom was very involved in the church and still is. So we had kind of that group, the church group, and my baseball group and the football group. And my mom encouraged us to do things at school and, be a good student. So we had all these pockets of people, and my parents just didn't want us to be in the hockey locker room, and that's it. So they were really encouraging that way.
Well, as a parent and going through some of those things with kids, I think it just keeping the kids busy and a positive thing, and having all these different groups of friends can really make a well-rounded person. I couldn't agree with you more. Let's go forward now to, you had quite the illustrious high school career before we get on to collegiate and professional, but your high school career, you played for a very stellar program. Can you tell us about that and how those experiences were?
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun, and again, just really fortunate enough to be around the people I was, and had a coach I had, and coach, Bruce Plant, and he was great, and just really fortunate. That's really the only word I can really describe it as. I put a lot of work into it, and I loved doing it, and I never, thought it was bigger than what it was, and I just enjoyed doing it, and probably didn't realize how important it was to the community until now. I'm kind of on the outside looking in to see what kind of Hermantown means to that community and different hockey associations. So, having a little bit different perspective of it probably gives me a little bit more. That was a really cool experience. But when I was in the moment in there, I was just playing, and it was fun. And I was fortunate enough where I was good enough where my number was called maybe a lot and I got to play a lot. And so, but it was really fun and it was a good group of guys. And, I was really fortunate, like I said, just to have parents that really, kept my perspective in the right spot and making sure that I was a good teammate. Like my mom, I don't think watched any of my games. She was at my games, but she liked to talk and liked to do those things. And so she didn't know how many goals I had or what I did or things like that. She asked me if I worked hard and was I a good teammate. And I think that stuff's really important too. And so it was really fun. It was a great experience. Like I said, looking back at it, I probably realized it was more special looking back at it than I was in the moment. But I was playing hockey. I was trying to win. I was really competitive, trying to win as many games as I could. And now it just seems like it's every year with Hermantown. And we actually lost some games back then. They don't really lose anymore. So so it was really fun. It was like I said, a different group of friends I had that I experienced that with, and it was really fun, and I was really fortunate.
So I do want to share with our listeners that in 3 years of high school hockey, Adam, I don't know if you remember this, but I did a little bit of research. You had 148 points in 3 years in high school. That's not too shabby. So your mom must have been doing a lot of talking if she was missing all that going on there. But you had such a great career. Now, can you tell us about being selected number one in the 2010 USHL entry level draft?
Yeah, so the USHL, the United States Hockey League, is the main draft or the main league that produces the players that go play on in Division One. So a lot of the players before they come to Minnesota Duluth, they're playing in that league 1, sometimes 2 years. So it's a drafted system. Yeah, and my senior year, and I was fortunate enough where I had a good year, and they had that first pick, and they recognized someone that I guess they wanted to take a chance at me and do that, and they were kind of a little bit of a rebuilding organization at the time, so it was a little bit scary, right? And so you kind of have a little bit of pressure of they chose me over a lot of other people, so there's a little bit of that pressure that I probably have never felt before. It seemed like I was just playing to play, and you feel the pressure of maybe being, one of the better players on Hermantown. And if you don't play well, the game might not go well and some little things like that. But it was just a whole new world of like Chicago. And, I didn't really travel too far to play hockey. We pretty much stayed in the state of Minnesota. Nowadays people travel around all over the place. So I didn't really know what it was or what I was getting into, to be quite honest. And then when I showed up in Chicago, there was kids from California on the team and New York. And it was really the first time that I probably saw the big scope of hockey, where I was outside the Minnesota bubble. And so it was a really good experience. It was probably, I'll be honest, it was really uncomfortable at times in terms of going outside our comfort zone. It's really the first time I was really uncomfortable probably in my life of moving to Chicago. You're living with a billet family that you've never met. The level's really hard, so you're challenged probably more from a competitive standpoint than you ever have been. First time away from home in kind of a foreign area with foreign people. So it was really hard, to be quite honest, the first few months. And I go through with that, and it's kind of fun because I do a lot of recruiting now with building relationships with high school kids, and then they're going through that process and they're going to junior hockey for the first time. And I use that story a lot to reflect on and say it gets easier, making sure, they know to stay positive. And so it's really fun to be able to help kids. And I think they get a little bit of reprieve when I say, hey, I went through it. It wasn't that long ago. I get it. You're not the only one. So it's kind of cool to use that experience, but it was really cool. And, but yeah, it was the first time I probably was really uncomfortable playing hockey, to be quite honest.
Adam, was it the uncomfortable level for you going from when you stepped on the ice, and I just know this from watching you for so many years, that you were the best player on the ice generally when you stepped on the ice. I mean, we'll just call it what it is. Now you go to Chicago and maybe you're not the best guy on the ice when you first step on. How intimidating is that when you first start playing? And some of these guys, you're right out of high school and maybe they have you by 20 pounds, and you're not a small guy, but they have you by 20 pounds and they've been around this rougher league.
Yeah, for sure. And that was, I was 18, and so the cap in that league is 20 years old. So after your 20-year-old year, you have to leave. You have to go to college, whether it's Division I or Division III. So there was 20-year-olds on the team. First time I'm playing with probably quite older players. back in 2010, and it's not so much anymore, probably for the best. There was still a lot of fighting in that league. It was junior hockey, so fighting was pretty prominent. So that was the first time I was exposed to that. Yeah, you're not kind of the all-star anymore, so it's the first time you're really having to dig into it, right? It's you don't really realize how, I don't want to say easy, but when you're always, one of the better players, it's kind of easy to fall back into not, maybe doing everything you need to be the best player. And that was the first time I was like, oh, I really have to do everything I can to be the best player, because I can't just go out there and be the best player. So it was probably in, I still have some years left, hopefully, but probably, looking back in my whole life was probably the first time I was really, really had to dig in to something and, use everything I was taught by my parents and doing all those things to kind of find myself and find my footing. And I did. And it was a really rewarding experience. And I often look back at that time as something that I thought I grew a lot in that time period.
I've heard that from many people who've gone through that transition. They say it's probably one of the, if not the biggest growth period that they've gone through, one of the biggest growth periods. So, Adam, from the USHL, you had committed, and we were very fortunate here that you committed to where you work now, UMD, University of Minnesota Duluth, men's Division I hockey, and you come back home actually to play Division I hockey. Tell us about the transition from USHL into D1 and actually coming back home and playing in front of a lot of people who already knew you.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough. I committed to UMD when I was in high school, and just it was probably the most surreal experience of my life, because I kind of grew up and we went to almost every game that we could. And yeah, I was like, Coach Salmon, who's still here. He was just kind of, this person I really was like, he was like a mythical creature. It was like someone, like if I saw in the grocery store or something like that, I remember when I was young, I'd like freak out, and I work with him every day. So I tell him that sometimes when he gets mad at me. So I'll make sure I remind him that I used to be nervous when I saw you in the grocery store. So no, again, just I was just really fortunate. Like, it's all I can say is, come and be able to come back and kind of, live, because at that time when we were kind of growing up, the Minnesota Wild, they weren't really around until a little bit later in our teen years. So UMD, I never really dreamt of playing in the NHL. It was always really UMD, and that was how I thought, and I didn't think of anything after that until maybe I got here. But yeah, it was really surreal in the first. And that was another adjustment, right? Now you have some players that are even better, and now you're kind of back in that uncomfortable setting of, wow, I got to even dig in harder here. And there's some really good players. Some players my freshman year, I was fortunate enough to watch Jack Connolly win the Hobey Baker that year. He's the best player in college hockey. And a couple other players stepped right on into the NHL that next year. So, JT Brown and these other guys. So it was a whole new level, and it was fast paced, and it was like, you got to hang on. And I hung on for probably the first half of my freshman year until I really felt any sort of comfort of, okay, I think I can do this. And so it was hang on. And I think the one thing about being a little bit, I guess, uncomfortable in the setting in Chicago, when I went and played junior hockey, no one really knew who I was. If I looked in the stands, I didn't know if I had a bad game or a good game. I knew no one really cared, except for my coaches probably. But, when I came back to UMD, I knew, that people knew who I was, and, there was a little bit added pressure there. So it was just that another element as I was playing college that maybe was different than junior, saying, okay, I'm here. If I do have a bad game, or if maybe I'm not playing every game, which I did in my freshman year, people are probably, asking what happened to him and this and that. And so that was probably a little bit more added pressure of just really a lot of noise. And if you're a local kid, it's a great, and I recruit local kids, and I tell them that all the time, is it's when you have a good experience at Duluth, there's nothing like playing at UMD as a local kid, but it's you have to make sure you have a good experience, and there are some added pressure. So just making sure kids know that as they're coming local kids, another experience that I can pass on to some kids we're recruiting. So, but yeah, it was just another kind of growth period of my life. And it was just another one that, okay, here it goes, kind of your fight or flight moment as a person. And luckily I had some of that background as a kid. I always kind of chose to fight it and not kind of run away from it. So, and again, that just goes back to kind of probably what I heard every single day I got home from school and all those things that, I was instilled younger. I was like, okay, I can do this. So that was really fun.
Adam, the transition now back to, because you're playing hockey when you're in juniors, and now you're a student athlete, and I really understand that, and I see that with any of the students, they go by student athlete when you're playing in Division 1. What was that? Because now you're ingrained back in school and you have your studies to do, but yet you're at a full-time job playing Division 1 athletics at one of the top programs in the nation. What is that like to juggle?
Yeah, it was demanding, right? And when I went to junior hockey, and a lot of people don't know, you can take college courses online. It wasn't as popular as it is now, but I never took any college courses. So I pretty much was on a break of school for a year. I just played hockey, and that's a positive about junior hockey. You can really get good at your craft, and you just dedicate to it and this and that. So when the school got thrown back onto it, it made it a little bit difficult, and again, just an adjustment period. But academics was always really important growing up, and my mom and dad really made sure that was, that, and it was something that I was always never hesitant to do. They didn't have to tell me to do my homework. I was fortunate that way because when I saw my older brothers not do their homework and they got yelled at, there's probably some lessons there, like, some other things. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that because that seems like not that fun getting yelled at or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it was really demanding, but going back at it, playing some different sports and kind of really being busy my whole life, it didn't seem like it was that crazy. But kind of looking back and watching some of these guys when I'm in this seat now, I have because some kids have bad practices here, but then you forget they're going to school. They're at an age where, they're having probably more significant relationships, and there's some difficulties there. And it's not just that they're not having a bad practice because they don't feel it that day. They might have had a test this morning and failed, and they might have had an argument with their significant other. Like, you just don't know. And so you're trying to tell them to perform at this really high level, but there's so many other things going on that you kind of forget. And then you realize, like, okay, I remember it was a big adjustment, especially for young players. So I will give Coach Sandlin a lot of credit. He gives a lot of those young players some leeway when it comes to that, and making sure we have relationships where they feel comfortable coming to us, say, hey, this is a little bit overwhelming in this area. How, can we help? So, which is really good. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle. And I think that's what makes probably student athletes in college attractive for jobs, and why, the players that don't move on and maybe play professional hockey here, when I see them they're doing really well in their careers, and they're attractive for job opportunities because of that. The schedule is so demanding.
Adam, your junior year at UMD, which is pretty unheard of, you were asked to be the captain of the hockey team. That doesn't happen very often. So, what leadership skills have you been told by Coach Sandelin that as a junior, he wants you to wear the C on your jersey for not only your junior year, but your senior year as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was like, again, just growing up and watching UMD, and it was a huge honor, and probably still something, probably the only time or I maybe heard my dad get choked up when I told him about that. So that was really special. And, me and Coach Allen have always had a really good relationship, and, probably why it came full circle for me working here. But, yeah, I think my junior year was a little bit of a rebuild year. Actually, there was a kind of a 2-year stretch where we lost a lot of players to the pro hockey, and it was kind of some young people in the team. And it was kind of that, trying to build that foundation back up to kind of now where it is today. And I just was always something that I took pride in my work ethic. And I don't know, I don't really have a secret answer for you, to be honest, in terms of that. And I think that's probably a big part of being a leader. It's not forced, it's genuine. I think it's how you do small things every day. I don't think there's these big acts of courageous things that you do. I think it's just how you approach every day. And it was just something, again, I'll just go back to when I grew up. It was just, the expectation was high for us. We had to do good in school, and we had to make sure we worked hard, and being a good teammate, that was really important to my parents. And again, I could have been the best player in high school and this and that, but they never cared about that. They never asked me about it. They never stressed it. They never said, oh, you should have got the assist on that goal, that, the ref didn't see you pass that puck. Or there was never, ever a conversation in our house of, I actually remember kind of a funny story, but we had to do tryouts in peewees and bantams, back in Hermantown, and then it was like over a three-day course or something like that, and I was fortunate enough, I was asked to play peewee a year early, and I got moved up a level, and I was fortunate enough to make the team, and I was fortunate enough to led the team in points that year as a first year kid in peewee. And I remember I came to tryouts the next year, and I was kind of a returning player, and I had the most points on the team from the last year, and I don't know if my dad felt that I was too confident going into the tryouts as a second year player, but he said they don't just take everyone, you have to make the team again. That just because you were on the team last year doesn't mean that you're on the team this year. So it was just always those little, I think, purposeful mind games, and I remember saying, I'm like, is there a chance I actually don't make this team? I felt like I did pretty good last year. So it was always that, like, kind of kept you on the edge, and it was never, yeah, this will be easy and do this. So I think that was, looking back at it, and again, in a time right now where I'm in a position to kind of reflect on some more things, that I think that was a big reason why I just kind of always kept my toes, and it wasn't, yelling or screaming, or just making sure that you're always doing the things the right way, and always things I always did. And I think, fortunately, my teammates at Duluth recognized that, and I was really fortunate and proud that they recognized that. And I always took that very serious. And I certainly was never the best player at Duluth at all. We had a lot of really talented players. I certainly was not a top player really here while I was here, and I worked hard, and I did my best. And I think people recognized I was a good teammate, and that was just kind of how it was. And I always valued team success, and I always thought it was more fun to win something than score a goal. And I truly believe that. I'm not just saying that. So so it was a special moment, a special honor.
This podcast is called Leader of the Pack and True Leaders, and we're talking about you being a 2-year captain, which is really pretty unheard of in Division I sports, and the program you went to. Being as humble as you are, I think that right there shows some pretty darn good leadership skills. So congratulations. Adam, let's transition now to professional hockey. Boy, there's been a lot of transitions here, haven't there? A lot of growth potential. So you go into the Penguins organization. Tell us how that all works. You have the NHL, you have the AHL, you have the ECHL. What does all of these acronyms mean, and where did that play into your story?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So obviously, I think everyone's familiar with the NHL. That's the Minnesota Wild. That's, everyone knows that league. That's the highest level of hockey that you can play at. And I think there's a lot of lesser known leagues, is the AHL, the American Hockey League, which is the level that I played in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and also Rochester, New York. And the American Hockey League, every team is owned by the NHL. So every NHL team has their own farm team, and that's where they develop their players to hopefully one day move on to the NHL. So a large majority, and I don't want to throw percentages on them, but I would say at least 60 or 70% of the NHL players that you currently watch on TV played in that American League level. It's very rare that you don't spend some time in there to develop. So some guys play in the American League their whole career. Some guys play 10 games and then they go play in the NHL for 20 years. It's all really dependent, and it's a really competitive league. It's a developmental league, and it's really fun to play in that league, and you're seeing players get called up to the NHL every day, and it's just a really cool league, and you get treated really well. And then the one level below that, there's kind of a 3-tier level, is the East Coast Hockey League, which is every NHL team has a East Coast League hockey team. So it's pretty much just one level below AHL. So the NHL is fed by the American League, and the American League is fed by the East Coast Hockey League. So you can kind of play in all 3 levels in 1 year. It's more common to play in the American League and the East Coast League. So it's just that it's basically AAA, AA, and single A baseball. People are more familiar with that term. So, or I guess major leagues, AAA and AA would be more of a appropriate. So, and it was really fun. And I was very fortunate enough to do some training camps in Pittsburgh and in Buffalo. And I got some preseason games in Pittsburgh, which was really fun. So I got to feel a little bit of that NHL action, and I got to take the airplane to the game and all that thing. So I got a little bit of taste of it, but it was I spent most of my time in that level, but it was really, really cool, and it was nothing I ever expected to do. And So it was really fun, and it was a good experience. And I love living on the East Coast, actually. Something different. Rochester, New York, I thought was really cool city. And so, yeah, it was a really cool experience. And part of me wishes I could do it a little bit longer, but an opportunity came for this. And, yeah, it was really fun. And me and my wife had a really good time. We met so many good people, and you meet so many people from all over the world, and, kind of different backgrounds and things like that. So just such a special experience. You get to play hockey for a little bit, and once in a while they send you a paycheck. It's great. And so it's really fun.
So you actually get paid to do this stuff, right?
Once in a while.
We have discovered the best American-made truck racks on the market. The Minnesota-made truck racks by Spring Creek Manufacturing are built with aluminum and are universal, meaning they can fit most brands, styles, years, and bodies of trucks. Plus, they are rust-proof. Whether for your truck or your company's commercial fleet, these are the truck racks for you. No need to buy a new truck rack every 3 to 5 years. Buy it once and have it for life. Plus, enjoy an exclusive 15% off, yes, 15% off your next online order with springcreek.com with code LEADER15. That is LEADER, LEADER 15. Exclusions apply. Now, back to the podcast.
Adam, question that came from one of our employees is, please ask Adam, who's the most famous person you ever played hockey with?
I mean, I guess, I was fortunate enough to be in some training camps with, Sidney Crosby and those guys, be on the same ice with those guys for a practice or things like that. But, I guess, Brian Giunta, he was the captain of the American Olympic team a few years back. He was the first American captain to captain the Montreal Canadiens, which was cool. And I played with him in Rochester as he was getting ready for the Olympics. But UMD has had a pretty good run of some famous people. And I know you've had Neil Pionk on this podcast, and fortunate enough to play with Alex Iafallo here that's doing really well for the LA Kings. And yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on. Fortunate enough to coach, Scott Prunovich and Mikey Anderson and Dylan Sandberg and Noah Cates, who's doing really well in Philadelphia now. So yeah, it's been fun, and they're all just super good people. And it's been really fun to see those guys, and it's been rewarding to know that they're doing what they want to do, and they're good people too. So it's really cool.
That's really cool to hear that they're good people too.
Yes.
They're that's really where it's at. So let's talk about 2018. You come back home. You come back to UMD as an assistant coach, your old alma mater, literally working now for your old coach, Scott Sandelin, who is a iconic coach in Division I hockey. Tell us about how that all came about and how that transition went for you, Adam.
Yeah, so it totally unexpected. And so I was playing in Rochester. I think it was my third or fourth year pro. It was, probably a month left in the season. And I actually had signed a contract for the following year to play in the American League again with Rochester. I really enjoyed it there. I was committed to go play there next year. So that I had no plan to go coach. So about a month left in the pro season that we were playing, UMD had won a national championship. Watched that, very cool. After that happened, there was a little bit of moving pieces in college hockey where Bob Moskow got the job at Minnesota, and the job at St. Cloud opened. So the current associate coach, Brett Larson, was given the St. Cloud state job. So just a normal day after practice, and I remember texting a lot of Coach Sandlin and Coach Herger and Coach Larson and saying congrats and awesome. And I think I actually told him I re-signed for next year, so I was super pumped. And Coach Sandlin called me, and we talked once in a while, but it was pretty rare for him to call me. And I said I thought that was kind of strange. So he just asked, "Hey, do you want to come back and coach?" And I was kind of taken back a little bit, and because I was really fortunate. That doesn't always happen. I think, the level that we talked about in the USHL, that's where a lot of college coaches come from. You kind of have to cut your teeth in junior hockey. There are a few exceptions. Guys who have really good NHL careers generally get some jobs maybe a little bit easier at the college level. But for me to get that opportunity with absolutely no coaching experience or recruiting experience or anything like that, really unheard of. And at my age, I think at the time I was the youngest assistant in college hockey for some years there. So a little bit taken back by that. And he said, no, I'm serious. And I kind of I let him know my concerns. I said, hey, I've never coached. I don't even know if I want to be a coach. And that was the truth. I never dreamt of being a coach. It never crossed my mind. So, after thinking about it and talking to my wife, it was just something I couldn't pass up. If I wanted to pursue that, I would have had to take a much longer road if I went to jump on that opportunity. So I asked some people close to me, and, I ended up just jumping on it. And that's where I probably said I probably left pro hockey a little bit before I was ready. And so that was something that was hard. I was fairly young. I was healthy. I had good bones for the most part. So that was really hard and pretty emotional for us. So, but I couldn't turn it down. And it was kind of baptism by fire. It was right away. And we just won a national championship, and we have to defend it now. And now you're coaching. So it was usually you get the new coaching job when the team's on the down and you maybe get new coaching staff, but it was right at the peak and we were looking to defend a national championship. So I was right in there, and Coach Salmon gave me jobs and responsibilities right away. And it was, there's an expectation of how we do things here. And I certainly was familiar with how he coached and how he ran, which was an advantage to me. But I was a young guy with no experience in coaching, no experience in recruiting, and learning on the fly. So it was quite the first year.
Tell us about what are your responsibilities? What do those entail as an assistant coach in your organization?
Yeah. So, Coach Salmon's really good at giving his assistant coaches a lot of autonomy. You're usually assigned a special team or in an area, either forwards and the penalty kill and the defense and the power play or something like that. So each of us kind of run the penalty kill, and the other assistant run the power play. And then you kind of work specifically with the forwards and specifically with the defense. So it's split up a little bit like that. So you're doing video, you're cutting a lot of video and watching video with individual players, and you're presenting video to a team, how we can do better, what teams are trying to do to us. And then recruiting is a huge part of it. You're going on the road, you're watching hockey games, you're building relationships with kids, talking to junior coaches, and it's pretty much nonstop. To be good at recruiting, you have to be in rinks, and it can take quite a toll on your personal life, and you got to know how to manage that. So every night you could be at a game across North America, whether it's junior, whether it's college, whether it's U16 or things like that. So recruiting is a big part of it. And just making sure you're there with the team and helping run practices and assistant. And it was busy, and you're learning how to recruit and how to build relationships and what makes Duluth attractive, and really fortunate. Duluth was an attractive place. So recruiting, you're more trying to identify talented players and kids who are right fits for Duluth. So learning that, and I had a great assistant coach to help me, Jason Herder. And so it was really good, but it was definitely, my head was spinning for a good 2 years probably when I got the job, until I really kind of felt again in that growth period of my life where it was just show up, work hard, and you got to hope for the best. Every time I kind of got ahead of myself, it would get a little bit overwhelming, kind of just bringing my back to junior hockey or starting at UMD. It was the same thing starting at Duluth, and there were some really good players. Like I mentioned, Mikey Anderson was on that team, Scott Prunovich, Noah Cates. So some guys that I owe a lot to by being a young person, not much older than these guys. I was probably 1 or 2 years missed them by playing with them. And they were really good. They didn't slack off when I was there. They didn't not listen to me because I was a young coach or this and that. They really gave me their full attention, and they were really, I just can't thank them enough for how, made the adjustment really easy. When I spoke, they were listening, and which was really good. And that was the biggest fear for me. I'm like, oh, no one's going to listen to me. I have no coaching experience, this and that, but it was really easy. And I have a lot of good people to thank for that. Those guys that were really good.
We're actually taping this at the end of February. Probably won't be played until sometime in May. But I watched 2 of those guys play last night. Alex Iafallo and Mikey Anderson played against the Wild just last night. So two guys that you coach. Adam, talk about a little bit on this recruiting, because that seems to be something we all hear about in all sports. But what do you look for, and what goes into recruiting? And do you have a territory that's you're responsible or accountable for? Tell just for us laymen, what is recruiting all about?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's such a big scope, but such a big word. It's hard to really narrow it down into, until you're in it and get a pattern. And that was probably the biggest overwhelming thing I had to learn. And I asked the same questions probably for the first 2 years. What am I doing? Where are we going? What tells me he's going to be good at this level? And it just takes a lot of time and work and effort and building relationships and things like that. But it's really the lifeblood of what we do in college sports. You don't have good teams, and I don't want to say coaches are useless, but because I'd be out of a job. But it's really about, you can only move the needle so much, and you can teach good habits and culture. But if you don't get good kids that are willing to be coachable and have the talent to do the things that we want to do here, it's really difficult. But for us, because we only have two, the assistant and the associate, or the two assistants are really the only two out going out and doing the grunt of the work. So Western Canada, British Columbia and Alberta, and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, those are all areas that we have to be good in, and Minnesota in the Midwest, the Chicagoland area and things like that. So Minnesota high school we'll watch a lot. And then there's USA festival camp. So USA Hockey identifies the best, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, and they kind of bring them all into one place. So there's a lot of showcases and events where they bring the best players, whether it's in Alberta or British Columbia. So we kind of have certain events that we can go to throughout the year to start our list. We're not just going blind. And then we watch the USHL, which we had talked about, and the Alberta Junior Hockey League, which is the USHL in Alberta, the British Columbia Hockey League, which is in British Columbia. And it's kind of hard to put total in layman's terms, so I could go on and on about it, but you're basically talking to a lot of coaches and building relationships, and it just takes time to identify what translates. You want a kid that works hard, has good body language, has good reputation from the coach, and those are all things. Those are those are non-discussions from Coach Sandlin. No matter how talented you are, you need to be a good teammate, work hard, do the right things. We try to get as many captains here as we can. And then it just takes time to identify what's going to translate. If a player does really well in the USHL, generally that's going to translate because he's playing against his peers. He's going to play in college. So the Minnesota high school is a little bit different because of, the talent level at different teams, and you got to catch the right games at the right time. And there's a lot of good players in there, but generally the older you can push off kind of recruiting, the more certain you can be, but generally that's not exactly how it works. So, and we're fortunate to get players at the U.S. National Development Program, generally the best in their age at a time. So yeah, it's just a lot of running around, watching hockey, building relationships, and it's a really rewarding thing. You get to know families, you get to know kids, and from that recruiting process, maybe they're 16, 17, 18 years old, and you know them till they graduate, maybe 22, 23, 24. You've been through a lot in their life, right? You've been there to talk to them on the phone because they're really uncomfortable in junior hockey, just like I was. And then you get to see them sign an NHL contract and everywhere in between, and it's really cool moment that you kind of bond together. So and then when they commit to your school, generally we're dealing with a lot of kids that have a lot of really great options, and they're getting full offers from 5, 6, 7, 8 different schools that are really good schools academically and athletically. So when they choose you, you feel like you have a responsibility to do well by him and his family. So it's a really rewarding experience. There's a lot that goes into it. The gist of it takes a lot of time and effort and sacrifice to go do that and find the right players.
It's interesting, Adam, because the very first 3 things that you mentioned that you look for in a player, none of them had to do with hockey. It had to do really, if I could sum it up in what I was thinking as you were talking, was character.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think you have to have a certain level of talent. I don't want to misinterpret that by saying we're just going to go find high character kids. We have to be good enough at some level, but a talented player that doesn't have it has proven over time that they're not going to get much better. They're not going to be a good teammate. They're not going to value team success, and all those things can collapse a culture that we feel like we've built here strongly. So it's that balancing act of finding players that are physically talented enough to play at this level, produce at this level, but also have that character side of it. That's the hardest thing to juggle. because you're presented with some really talented players that maybe you feel in your heart wouldn't be a good fit for Duluth, or you feel that they don't value what maybe we value, but they're very good at hockey. And so you have to understand what's most important, right? And you have to find somewhere in between. And that's where Coach Sandlin is really good, and his experience has helped me, saying, if you have any doubt, don't do it, because it's never going to end well. Even if we win a national championship, what's the point? You know, if we don't have good people in the community and no one's really excited for us to win, then what's the point, right? So that I've really taken that, and it's really hard. It's easier said than done, I can tell you that much, because you're trying to win hockey games. That's the point of our jobs, and we're a result-based business. So, but also we're a community-based program. We feel like we're very tied to the community, just like you guys are. And so we have a responsibility not only to win hockey games, but do it the right way with the right people. So it's a balance.
That's pretty cool. And you certainly do, as a season ticket holder and long-term season ticket holder. You know, that character and the community surrounding the team. Scott Sandelin and his team around him, such as you, have certainly built that, because it is definitely community focused, and the community supports the heck out of all of you. Adam, in 2022, all of a sudden, son of a gun, let's get promoted again here. So now you go from assistant coach to associate head coach. Is there a difference in what your duties are as in responsibilities and accountabilities in this promotion you get last year?
Yeah, again, just baptism by fire. Just seems like the learning curve is just steeper and steeper and steeper. And so again, just something, I'm just so fortunate that he felt like I was in a position to represent the program with the title I have. And as far as duties, responsibilities, not too much more. I have probably more of a voice with the team from a tactical standpoint, you know, presenting information to the team, being more of a voice to the team. You know, maybe some recruiting decisions are filtered through me, maybe a little bit more in terms of Coach Sandlin as a head coach. You're not out in the recruiting trail a lot. Your main focus is with the team, and how can we win hockey games with the current team we have. Me and Cody Chupp is our assistant coach. He's just a great person and great coach and great addition for us. We kind of head up that recruiting, and you know, I'm probably in a position now to make sure we're doing the right things, we're recruiting the right people, we're bringing the right kids on visits, we're talking to the right people, we're representing ourselves as me and Cody are out on the road the right way, and things like that. So have a little bit more of a thumb on that, and quite frankly, a responsibility. And if we're not maybe doing the right things and getting the right kids or things like that, you know, Coach Sandlin will maybe get involved. But it's been really good. And like I said, maybe a little bit more of a voice, and a little bit more Coach Sandlin will lean on me and put me in situations to make some decisions as if, you know, I was the one making the decisions. And so he's been really good at putting me in situations that I'm really uncomfortable with, but he knows that it's the best. And so I just can't thank him enough for just giving me those opportunities and kind of trusting me with a program that he's pretty much built. And, you know, it started really ugly when he started, and he's dedicated his life to it for the last 23, 24 years. And for him to trust me to go out and kind of represent the program on the road and things like that, I can't thank him enough.
That's really cool. Hey, another question that some of our employees had. They said, and you know, we're all fans. Come on, we're community here in town. We're all fans. They said, Adam Krause wears an earpiece and talks into his sleeve quite often. So who are you talking to? And is this just tell us all about what's going on with the earpiece.
Well, it's for security breach, just in case there's a security breach at AMSOIL. No, we have a coach's booth up in the suite level at AMSOIL, or even up in the press box on road rinks. And so I'm in communication with Christian Kelly. He's the director of hockey operations. So what we talk about is he's recognizing maybe any patterns that teams are doing from the eye in the sky that maybe you can't see in the bench. It could be tactically, it could be the way a team's forechecking, it could be the way there's open space on maybe a neutral zone transition or the offensive zone, or maybe some schemes that way. He makes sure he's watching on his computer, and he can replay some things. If maybe I've noticed something, he can replay it back, and I can ask him questions and this and that. Another big thing in our game is challenges. We can challenge things now. So he has video review where he is. And so if there's a potential offsides, if there's a potential 5-minute major, he's the one that is basically making that call down to us to challenge that play or not to challenge that play. So it's kind of a constant communication with, it could be tactically, it could be about a challenge. And so that's kind of what that is. But I get that question a lot. So for sure, people think I'm running security there or something.
No, I knew it wasn't that. I knew you were talking to somebody about the game when I've seen that, and our obviously our employees are as well. Adam, where do you see the program going in the future? You've had such a stellar program. It's known as, you know, a top program in the country. Where does it go from here?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We've kind of, you know, it's a good and bad thing when you have success, right? The target's on your back. The expectations are really high. We've been fortunate enough to do some things that really haven't been done a lot in college hockey, in the history of college hockey. So where do you go from there, right? There's a lot of turnover in college hockey. Kids leave, you know, and so that recruiting process is really challenged every year. So if you don't bring in the right kids, and I'm not meaning by the right kids of character, maybe they're not as good as the kids that just left. It takes time to rebuild that and do those things. And so, yeah, I you know, again, all we can do is go get the right players. And I don't know where it's going to go. I think we're going to do things the right way. I know that. I can't tell you how many games we're going to win or how many championships we're going to win. That's not something that we're really that concerned about. If that's going to happen, if we do the little things right, if we go get the right players as coaches, we're going to do the same things that we always do with the teams that we're fortunate enough to win with. We're not telling this team anything different. So, you know, we stress the things that were important to that team, and maybe, you know, depending on where we're at, you know, talent level or experience level, we'll adjust some things that way, obviously. But we're just going to try to do our best with the best people we can. All we can do is go out on the road and go get the best kids we possibly can and do the right things and work our butts off at the rink and watch video and, you know, do the right things and making sure these kids feel supported. And that's all we really can do and hope for the best. And that's kind of our strategy. So I think it's worked, but we got to just collect as many good people that happen to be good at hockey that value what we value, and good things will happen. We know that. So, but I can't sit here and guarantee anything, but that's how it's always been done here. And I know we're going to continue to do that. Definitely no complacency. I know that Coach Sandlin does not believe in complacency. I can tell you that. You know, there were some days where we were really, you know, we were a talented team. We were fortunate enough to win back-to-back national championships, and we were one of the best teams in the country. And it didn't feel like that every day. You know, it was kind of like going back to when my dad had me conversations and say, well, you might not make the team this year. And I was like, well, I felt like I was one of the best players last year. And it was just very similar. He's very similar that way. Is like, there's no complacency that way, and it never will be. And so hopefully people know that about him is, you know, if there's a year that we might lose a few more games, well, because we're young or this and that, we're doing the right things and doing it the right way. So.
Well, with a recipe like that, I think the future is pretty darn bright, and with the leadership that you have, you know, with yourself and Coach Sandelin and the crew, I think it's a pretty bright future. Adam, we're going to switch gears here. We're not going to talk about hockey anymore. We're going to go right at you, a little personal on you here. So, what's your favorite hobby outside of hockey or work?
Well, I mean, pretty demanding job. I'll be honest. We recruit a lot. We're gone a good majority of the time. So the easy answer for me is I have to carve out as much time as I can to hang out with my kids. You know, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old that are getting busier and sometimes asking where I am. And, you know, I'm telling them I'm going to find hockey players. And so they kind of get a kick out of that. So just spend a lot of time hanging out with those guys. I don't have a ton of time at home. So that's really important to me. If I had to be a little bit more exciting answer, I would say I try to golf in the summer, try to get outside as much as we can. We try to be outside and be an active family. So just a lot of family time.
Adam, favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough, you know, even recruiting, you know, there's we get to recruit in some beautiful places out in British Columbia and on Vancouver Island, and, you know, been fortunate to get up to Alaska on some vacations. And I'm not that much of a world traveler. You know, Alaska was really good. We went there a few years ago, so that was really fun experience. But yeah, I don't mind a beach either. I'll go down to Florida. I don't care where it is, as long as I can see some water and do some relaxing.
There you go. And Adam, what is your biggest fear? You've overcome so many fears that normal people would have, in each step of your career when you take those jumps and in your hockey lineage. What's your biggest fear?
Oh, I could go a lot of different directions with that. The simple answer is snakes. I cringe when I even say the word, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a pretty organized guy. I'll be honest. So like some clutterness really gets me on edge. But the fear of with Duluth just maybe not living up to the expectations, and I think it drives us really. Because you win but you don't want to disappoint. This program means a lot to us and me personally, and I certainly don't want to be the guy to come in here and change what's happened. So I think that drives me, and I think it's okay to have a little fear of it can't go the other way. So it makes sure I'm going to watch the game. So I'll go out on a limb and just say, fear not living up to those things and what we need to do here and making sure the community's proud of us. So I'll say that.
All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much for spending the time with us and away from not only the rink, but also your family that you don't get to spend enough time with. This has been really fun, really informational to learn about the lineage you've had, but then also about what goes into a unbelievable Division I hockey program and what makes it run and what goes into the life of the coaching staff with that. Our guest today, folks, has been Adam Krause, associate head coach of the UMD Bulldogs men's hockey team. Adam, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And good luck the rest of the run this year. And folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors.